Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Tonight we are learning Le'ilui Nishmat Rabbi Avram ben Reb Chaim Yehuda and Yecheskel ben Rabbi Avram, as well as we're learning L'Refuah Shalema to Avram Yaakov ben Yael and to L'Chayla Chava Bas Chaya Esther. Okay, so let's get started. So, if anybody has been ever in contact with a baal teshuvah, or even just seen a baal teshuvah daven pray from a distance, you could tell that it's a very different davening. It's a very different, every word they say, they're focusing. The Shemana Esrei could take, 5, 10, 15 minutes even. And you look at that same person 5 years later. Again, this is not across the board, but you tend to see this trend. 5 years later, they know, that they're going through it very fast. They know how, what's the way everything is supposed to be said. And you could ask, what changed? 5 years ago, when you first started, you were praying, very slowly with a lot of kavanah. You were really focused on the prayer. And now all of a sudden, you're zipping through it. So you could say, okay, I learned the words. And that's why now I'm able to go through it much faster. But I think it's more than that. And that is if something is new, when something is fresh, you connect to it more. And you look at a baal teshuvah, it's not just the words that they're saying. There's a different connection that they feel. Like they feel now for the first time, they're really talking to God. They're really talking to Hashem. There is a different connection that goes when you're dealing with something, fresh. And this goes for everything in life. If you look at somebody, let's say that is going on a vacation. Let's say someone's going on a really long vacation. They're going a 1 month long vacation. And they're going to this exotic place in the far off, beautiful landscaping, beautiful scenery. And they get there. For the first week, they're mesmerized by the scenery. They look at it and their eyes lit up, and they could sit in there for hours and just appreciate God's beauty. And they really have an appreciation from it. Just a 1 month vacation. Look at it at the last week. At the last week of their stay, their appreciation, their connection, their ability to appreciate the scenery is very different than that first week. And now the question you can ask is that what changed? It's the same scenery. You're the same person more or less, right? It's just been a month. So what has changed? So you could say, okay, fine, you got used to it. Over time, you get used to it. And what happens is that once you get used to something, once you do something over, and you don't have that awness, that awesomeness, that connection, then you relate to it very differently. And this goes also for relationship. You look at someone who's the first week of their marriage versus the 10th week of their marriage. You don't have to go 10 years or 20 years down the line. There's a very big difference between the first week and the 10th week. There's a difference in the way they talk to each other. It's a whole different relationship. It's a whole different, again, marriage. It's supposed to grow. It's supposed to get better. It's supposed to get stronger. But there's something different, very, very different about it. And this is the way that things usually go. Over time, our connections to certain things tend to get stale, unless something is done about it. This includes also our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our connection to God, our connection to the mitzvos. And you can ask, okay, so maybe my connection is stale, but what's the big deal? Like, why is that so important? I check off all the boxes. I keep Shabbos, I keep kosher, I put on tefillin, I am careful with sneers, I daven, I do all the things that I need to do. So all the boxes get checked off. So what? So I'm not super connected to it, and so I'm not, super invested into it. But at the end of the day, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Which, again, granted, it's very good. And the reason why this is so important is in life, people want to enjoy what they have. They want to enjoy life in general. Everyone wants to live a happy life. Everyone wants to live an enjoyable life. If you do things that you're not connected to, that you don't enjoy, you're going to end up not doing it well, not doing it out of happiness, not connecting to it. Even though you check off the boxes, it's not going to be the same. You think about the way the parent treats a child. So let's say you do all the things that you need to do. You check off the boxes, all right? You go out, you take them out, you play with them, you spend time with them. But if your connection is stale, if you never tell them you love them, if you never hug them, if you never kiss them, if you don't show them that you want to spend time with them, all these check boxes that you're doing is only going so far. And this goes, again, it goes for everything, a husband and wife. The examples go on and on. Your job, the same scenario plays itself in so many different aspects of our life. So we see over here, there's a very, very important aspect to connect to something, to enjoy something. Because once you connect and once you enjoy, you're doing it out of happiness, you're enjoying life. It's a whole different ballpark. It's a whole different game that you're playing. So I want to share with you something from Reb Shimshon Pincus. He brings down a Gemara from Megillah. And that is that Reb Shimon ben Elazar says that Ezra instituted that the Jewish people should read the curses in Chumash Devarim, in Parshas Nitzavim Vayelech. There's curses that's written. So Ezra instituted that the curses should be read before Rosh Hashanah. What's the reason? The Gemara says, so that the year and its curses should come to an end. Meaning we read the curses, that was for the previous year. This year we want to have a good year without any curses. So that's Parshas Nitzavim and Parshas Vayelech. So Nitzavim is written, not every year like this year, it's set together. Sometimes it's separated. So what happens is Parshas Nitzavim is before Rosh Hashanah, and Parsha always before Rosh Hashanah, but sometimes the Parsha of Vayelech can be after Rosh Hashanah. It could be after that. Again, sometimes before, sometimes after, but this is the one that could be afterwards. And the question that Reb Shimshon Pincus asks is, wait a minute, why is it that Parshas Vayelech can be read afterwards? Out of all the curses, one of the greatest and the strongest curses is in Parshas Vayelech, and that is in Devarim, chapter 31, verse 18. It says, Anochi haster aster panai. I'm going to go, God is going to say, I'm going to go, and I'm going to hide my face on that day. And you think about it, that's like one of the greatest curses. That's one of the biggest, most difficult curses. So why ask Reb Shimshon Pincus, can this be read after Rosh Hashanah? If the whole purpose of what we're trying to do is put all the curses before Rosh Hashanah, why is it that this pasuk can be read after Rosh Hashanah? And the answer is that it goes on the next pasuk. And the next pasuk, the next verse, tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu is commanded, you're commanded to write this song, V'lamdas B'nai Israel, and to teach the B'nai Israel. Now, what is referring to? What is the song that the Torah says you have to write? This is referring to the Torah itself. Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded to teach the Jewish people Torah. So, explains Reb Shimshon Pincus. Before Rosh Hashanah, everything follows a certain plan. That certain plan is governed by laws and rules. And part of this plan is the curses that are written in Parshas Nitzavim. But in Parshas Vayelech, it's a whole different ballpark. It's a whole different game. It's a whole different teshuvah. It's a whole different everything. Where is a situation where God hides His face? There's only one thing that will be able to help you to get to reveal, to get connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to unhide, so to speak, that face. And that is Ve'ata kisvu lachem es ashira hazais. The lone solution, which again, it's referring to the Torah. The lone solution is, the only solution is to involve oneself with studying and learning Torah. You know, Judaism has 613 commandments, 613 mitzvos. Each commandment, it's like a body. A body has a body and a soul, right? A body without a soul, it's nothing. It's inanimate. In order to instill life into a mitzvah, there's the body of the mitzvah and there's the soul of the mitzvah. In order to instill life into that mitzvah, there has to be an involvement of Torah. See, there's something that's called a synthetic Jew. A synthetic Jew is a Jew that checks off all the boxes. They do everything that they're supposed to. They do the mitzvahs, they do the tzitzis, the tefillin, the Shabbos. They could spend $1,000 on their esrog, right? They could spend tons of money on the esrog, but at the end of the day, all that it is a body without a soul, because they don't connect to it. They're just doing it. They're checking the boxes. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Again, better than nothing, but they're just checking the boxes. There's no soul inside of it. The only thing, says Reb Shimshon Pincus, that breathes soul, a spirit of life into the mitzvah, into the commandment, and that makes a person a true, like Oived Hashem, a true servant of God, a true someone that connects to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the only thing, is Va'atu Kisvu Lechem Es Asher Hazos, and that is Torah learning. That's the only thing. There's no there's a bunch of different, there's one and only path to that, and that is Torah learning. And he brings in Mesilas Yesharim. Mesilas Yesharim, the Ramchal brings down in the 5th chapter, that he quotes a famous Gemara, which we quote very often in Kedushin, Barasi Yetzahara Basi Torah Tavlin. I created the evil inclination and I created the Torah as its antidote. So the simple interpretation of that, the simple understanding of that is that there is an evil inclination. We're all tempted to do things based on our desires, based on our character, based on our nature, to do things that maybe not be so appropriate. And this desire comes from the evil inclination. How do you overcome it? The way that you overcome it is through the antidote. And the antidote is the Torah. The Torah is that antidote. And says the Ramchal in Mesilas Yesharim that it is completely impossible for a person to be healed from this evil inclination without some sort of remedy. And the only remedy is Torah. That is the only remedy. So someone can think, you know what? I can be saved from this ailment, from this illness, from this evil inclination without Torah. That person, says Ramchal, is very, very much mistaken. And he speaks very harsh, says that he will only realize his mistake in the end when he dies with his sin. That's the Ramchal in Mesilas Yesharim in the 5th chapter. The Ramchal is teaching that a person can live his entire life doing the mitzvos, and he considers himself a huge or herself a huge righteous person. But if they don't have the Torah, if they don't have that, they are missing everything. They're missing everything, and in their mind, they never even think otherwise. They could be on Sukkot, they could do the biggest, beautiful Sukkah, they could have the best esrog, the best lulav. On Hanukkah, they buy the most expensive, beautiful chandelier, menorah, candelabra, they go all out on all the mitzvos. But he doesn't, or she doesn't even realize that in fact they're a sinner. They don't realize it. If they're lacking the Torah learning, they're lacking the connection, they're lacking so much. And since, says Reb Shimshon Pinkus, a person is so confident in his righteousness because they don't learn Torah, they're going to end up dying with the sin, as the Ramchal said. And he compares it to, imagine you have a person who's eating synthetic food that doesn't have any nutrients. A person can eat it and they'll be full, but they won't realize that it's not giving them the energy that they need until it's too late. They'll be in the hospital, they won't have any energy, they won't have anything, they're going to be in a state of collapsing. The malnutrition only kicks in only at the end. They're thinking they're eating all this, the synthetic food, all this food that doesn't have any nutrients, it's not going to sustain them. And this is how the Torah is comprised. There's two parts to the mitzvos. There's the outer part, where you check off the boxes, you do what you're supposed to do, and then there's that inner aspect. The inner aspect, which we said is Torah, but in essence, it's the relationship, it's the connection to God, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the difference with you keep Torah with mitzvos, meaning you learn Torah and you do the mitzvos, or you're just doing the mitzvos without Torah study. So if somebody goes and does not is not involved in any Torah learning, they lack this connection to God. So when you look at repentance, when you look at these day and age of teshuvah, it's not just going and repenting and not falling back into that sin. And in fact, the main aspect of teshuvah, as it says in Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 1, Im tashav Yisrael num Hashem elai tashav, that if you return to me, Yisrael, to me you should return. Meaning that it's very nice that you're giving up all your sins, and you should, right? You're giving up the lashon hara, the dressing, the immodestly, the keeping Shabbos correctly, kashrus, whatever. That's great, but don't forget the main aspect, and that is return to me. You have to go and you have to return to the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what you have to go, and that's what you have to return to it. So the pasuk in Parshas Vayelach in Devarim chapter 31 verse 16 says, "V'kama amazeh v'zana achrei elokei nechar haaretz." If let's say this nation comes up and goes and strays after other gods foreign of this land, which explains because what it means is that let's say you go out into the world, you see it's a very enticing world, it's a big world, it's very enticing. It's going to lead you to a situation where you're going to lose your connection to God. You're going to lose this connection to the spirituality. You're stuck in the world, you're out over there in the world, you're out in the business world, you're out in the, whether you're in college or whether you're studying, you're out in the world and you're losing this connection, this connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you see people that come back from Israel, they, after spending a year or two learning, either in seminary or in yeshiva, their connection to everything is very, very different. They do things so differently. And unfortunately, people say, oh, don't worry about it, you're going to become normal soon. And what's the normality? The normality reality in their unfortunately sick, twisted mind is that they're going to lose this connection. They think this is fanaticism. If someone's going over there, they come back from seminary and they're sitting over there and they're standing in front of they go to the bathroom, let's say, and they come out and they're saying Asher Yotzer and they're standing in one place and they're reading it from inside. That's what you're supposed to do. And maybe we don't all do the way that we're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. And then you see somebody that comes back and be like, oh, don't worry about it. Give it a few months. You're going to forget about all that. What happened in that year or two that they spent in seminary and yeshiva? They were learning nonstop. They built this connection to God. They built it, and everything that they did was very, very differently. But if you don't continue with that, if you don't build on that, that connection is going to wane and wane. It's going to go away, like everybody's saying. Oh, don't worry about it. In a few months, it's going to go away. In a few months, you're going to be just like a normal person, which is really far from accurate. Because all you're doing is you're just staling your connection. You're just taking what you built for a year and kind of crumbling it and throwing it away to a certain extent. So, and this, what happens is this, when the pasuk says that you're going to go and you're going to stray after other gods, you're going to be stuck in that big enticing world, and you're going to go and invest in, you're going to spend all this time in energy in the outside world, and what's going to happen is you're going to stray away from God. And this is what God responds in kind. Right? God responds in Devarim 31, chapter 18, just two verses after where you stray away. And God says, I'm going to go and I'm going to hide my face. If you're going to go and you're going to go out, then I'm in return going to go and going to hide a face. Everything is connected. Everything is measure for measure. So when God is hidden, says Reb Shimshon Pincus, what can we do? What we're supposed to do? And that's the next verse. The next verse tells us exactly what we're supposed to do. Write down this song. This is the Torah. This is the Torah. That's how you build the connection. That's how you connect back. That's how you rekindle the light. The Chazal tell us in Medrash Tanchuma, in Parshas Eikev, that a mitzvah is called only after, at the end of it, when you finish it. So when you look at it, this time period is known as the high holidays, right, in English. You start off with Rosh Hashanah. We start off with Elul, really, right? You start off with El, where you're going and you're trying to become better. And then you come into Rosh Hashanah, which is Judgment Day, which just passed us. And then you're going into Yom Kippur, which is the day of not only the day of judgment, it's conclusion of the judgment, but it's also a day of the repentance. And what is the culmination of these days? And that is Sukkot. What's the culmination of Sukkot? That's Shmini Atzeres and Simchat Torah. Meaning that if we go according to what the Medrash was just telling us, that everything goes according to that, meaning that all that we're doing right now, the teshuvah of Elul, the going in the judgment day on Rosh Hashanah, improving ourselves in Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, going to Yom Kippur and asking for repentance, all that, what's the whole purpose of all that? That's for the culmination of Sukkot, which is what? Which is Shmini Atzeres and Simchat Torah. And the Arizal explains that what's a sukkah? A sukkah is like a hug from God. A sukkah is from a hug from God. The Gemara in Sukkot tells us that what is the requirement, the minimum requirement of a sukkah needs to have two walls and then a little bit, an extra tefach afterwards, meaning that it needs three walls. So it needs two full walls and one little bit extra. When you look at that little bit extra, that is like an arm, meaning that you have two walls. I'm trying to show my arm over here. You have one wall, two walls, and then a little bit extra. This is what a sukkah is kosher, meaning this is when you hug somebody. When you're going and you're hugging somebody, that is in reference to what a kosher sukkah is. A sukkah, in essence, is a hug from God. God is going and is hugging us on Sukkot as the form of what the kosher sukkah is. The height of the closeness, the height of everything that we're doing culminates in Shmini Atzeres Simchat Torah, where we have this connection to Hashem. We have this yichud, this singularity with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's just us and God. And I want to share with you something from the Shem Shmuel. The Shem Shmuel brings down the Zohar. The Zohar Kadosh says that Shmini Atzeres is a time when the Jewish nation enjoys a private audience with God. It's a one-on-one private audience. And if you look at it, when Shmini Atzeres, the 8th day Atzeres means like Atzor, stop. the word itself means to stop, meaning that, and this is how Rashi explains it, that the Jewish nation, Klal Yisrael, is stop, is like stay behind me. And Rashi explains as follows with a little mashal, a parable, that imagine you had a king, and a king invites all his children. They're all married, they all live far away. Invites all his children for a banquet for a certain number of days. And when their time comes to go home, the king says, I ask of you, all I ask you is please stay behind me one more day, just one more day. Your departure is very difficult for me. Ask the Shem Shmuel, wait a minute. If the whole reason is that God is just gathering his children, the Jewish nation, and we're spending time together with God, and then it's time for Sukkot to leave, and God says, no, wait a minute, just stay one more day because your departure is hard for me, doesn't it make sense that the more that we would stay, the harder and the harsher the departure would be, the more of a connection that you build? So it means that, ask the Shem Shmuel, it should be the opposite. It should be that God just said this out, because if your departure is hard, the more that we stay, the harder the departure is going to be. And the second question that the Shem Shmuel asks is that every single holiday, every single Yom Tov, there is a special relationship between us and God. Why is Shmini Atzeres, to stop this, just you and me, just one day, why is this different than any other holiday, than any other Yom Tov? So, when a person goes and gives a gift to his friend, or to her friend, there are two aspects to that. Number one, the person receives a gift. They actually physically get something. But secondly, and more importantly, there is a bond that is built based off that gift. So when you give a gift to someone, the value of the gift, maybe it's important, maybe it's not, that's not the most important takeaway from that interaction. The most important takeaway from a gift is now there is a bond. There is a connection that was just built, as opposed to, let's say someone goes and buys something in a shop. They go to a store, and they have also a relationship with the storekeeper. The buyer goes and takes his money out of his wallet, gives it to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper takes the money and gives them the item. So there's a momentary transaction over here. There is something that's happening over here, but that's all that it is. It's a momentary transaction. Once the person who buys the item leaves the store, the buyer leaves the store, between the buyer and the seller, they're all strangers again. There's no interaction. There's no connection. There's no relationship that was built in it, as opposed to a gift. A gift, you get an item, but there, even greater, there is a connection. That interaction is everlasting, and now that there is that connection, the bond is now stronger and more important than the gift itself. This is also when you go with a man and a woman. When a man wants to marry a woman, he first has to conduct something that's called kedushin. Kedushin, the man gives his bride a item of value, something that's shavah, something that has to be some sort of value. And the purpose for that, it's not for anything. Like, even though he's giving a gift, he's not getting anything back in return. There's nothing tangible that he's getting back. They can't even live together until they do the nisuin. The nisuin has to take place. So the act of giving, the act of kedushin, the act of giving, the whole purpose of it is that the man should strengthen his bond with his fiancé, with his woman, with the person that's going to be his wife. They become much closer. They cement that relationship, and that relationship outweighs and outlasts the gift that the man gives. So there is the item that's transferred in a buyer and a seller, and between a gift. But the bond is more important than the item itself when it comes to a gift, when it comes to, for example, kedushin. When it comes to Sukkot, the non-Jewish nations of the world, they all come and God blesses them. It gives them all the physical needs that they need. But there's nothing built on that relationship. God gives them. It's like a transaction. They come and they get and they leave. Klal Yisrael, the Jewish nation, on the other hand, the relationship is like a man and woman who's going to get married. God gives them a gift. It provides for them for the physicality, provides for them for the what they need for the coming on year. But not only that, there's also a drawing them close. There is that bond that happens, and this is something that's very different than all the other Yom Tovim, all the other holidays. This holiday, the holiday of Sukkot, is very different. For the reason being is that the holiday of Sukkot is not only for the Jewish nation. All the nations of the world come and they get a gift from God. There are 70 offerings that go. There's 70 bulls that are brought on Sukkot in the Beis HaMikdash for the 70 nations of the world. So Sukkot is like a banquet for everybody. The entire world gets something on the holiday of Sukkot. But the nations of the world, they come They take their brachas, they take it, they put it in their pocket, and they go out on their way. That transaction is over. The Jewish nation, they receive a blessing. They receive the physicality just like everybody else. But God tells them, "Don't go. Your departure is hard for me. I want to give you something special. I want to give you something that's unsuitable for the other nation." This is the special day of Shmini Atzeres. This is the special day of Shmini Atzeres that far outlasts the gift itself. So here we see, says Hashem Shmuel, that staying for one day extra, because we asked, like, if it's so hard, if God tells the Jewish nation, do me a favor, stay one more day, and this way, it's going to be too hard for me when you leave. So we say, what? Wow, just the opposite. The longer we stay, it's going to be more harder for you to leave. But this is the difference. The difference is that on this day, this is not only a day that you're just staying to get something. This is a day where we're building a bond, we're building a relationship, we're building a connection with God. And this day, therefore, is only applicable on Sukkot. All the other holidays are all for just the Jewish nation. But Sukkot is for everyone. So everybody comes, we all have the transaction, but God says, no, you stay behind one more day. I don't want you to leave just yet. And this is how we culminate the holiday. We culminate all the high holidays. We start Rosh Hashanah, we go in the Yom Kippur, then we go to Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, Simchat Torah. What's Simchat Torah? Simchat Torah is we take the Torah and we hug it and we kiss it and we dance with it. And this is what we're holding. If not for Simchat Torah, everything else is just synthetic. Everything else is just checking off the boxes. It's just a robotic relationship. And this is what the Torah says. The Gemara in Kedushin tells us, Barasi Yetzirah, Barasi Torah Tavlet. I created the evil inclination. I created the Torah as its antidote. That only through, you want to rekindle the connection? It's only through learning Torah. It's only through learning Torah that you're going to be able to rekindle the connection. That's why Mesilas Yesharim tells us that without Torah, a person cannot live their life as a good Jew. They'll check off all the boxes. They'll do everything that they need to. But only after they die, after 120, all of a sudden they realize that they missed out on so much. And this is what we say in Shemana Esrei. We say it every single day, multiple times a day. Hashivenu avinu l'sarasecha. Return us, God, to your Torah. V'karvenu malkinu l'avodasecha. And hence you will bring us closer to our work. And this is havachzirenu b'teshuvah shleim l'fanecha. You're going to return us to a complete teshuvah. If you want to do teshuvah, if you want to do repentance, then you have the whole goal of it is to return to God, to build that connection, to build that relationship. And the only way to do that is hashivenu avinu l'sarasecha. Bring us closer to your Torah. So here's something, and this is the following thing is my own cheder. So take it or leave it. Leave it at that. Sukkot is known as Zman Simchaseinu. If you look at it, the other Shalosh Regalim, for example, so you have Shavuos, Zman Matan Toraseinu. The time Shavuos, the time, the translation Shavuos, the time that we get the Torah. Pesach, Passover, Zman Chereseinu, the time that we're free, we became free from slaves. But Sukkot doesn't say anything about being in a sukkah. Doesn't Zman Simchaseinu, time to be happy. What's the happiness special about here versus everything else versus the other holidays? Because there's something extra, there's something special in the holiday of Sukkot. Hashem says, God tells you, it's just me and you. Let's build this relationship. We came out of Yom Kippur, we came out of Rosh Hashanah, we came out of Yom Kippur. We're connected to God. We did teshuvah, hopefully out of love. We're there, and now comes the Sukkot. That's the time we have a special connection and a relationship for God. This is the time we get a hug from God. That's the Sukkot, the three walls, just like a hug, as the Rizal explains. This is a time when you build a relationship. Now, how do you build a relationship if you don't want to do it, if you don't enjoy it, if you're not doing it out of happiness? This is the whole purpose. If you're doing something and you're just checking off the boxes, there's no relationship building. So you want to know why we're happy, why we're dancing with the Torah at the end of that? Because that's what builds the relationship. That's what builds everything that we came to. And that's why Sukkot is this man simchaseinu, because we just build up to this until this time. We did the teshuvah, we did the repentance, we were 40 days, we're sitting in there and trying to improve ourselves and getting better, and we're working on ourselves in all aspects, working up early for slicha. We do non-stop, we're trying to connect it, but the end of the day, the culmination, the effect, the end, the goal is Simchat Torah, where you're able to go and you're able to dance with the Torah, you're able to go and connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The only way to do that is through learning Torah. That's the only way that you're going to be able to do that. And that's why my own little chiddush. That Simchat Torah, that specifically is a time. Sukkot is a time for Zman Simchasenu. It's a time that if you want to build a relationship, you have to do it out of happiness. You can't go and check off the boxes with your spouse and be like, well, I'm taking you out. I cook you dinner. I provide for you. I give you, like the finances. That's nice. You check off all the boxes, but you're not building the relationship. You want to build a relationship, it has to be out of happiness. It has to be because you want to do it. It has to be because you enjoy it. You don't want to have a synthetic relationship. You don't want to be a synthetic Jew. You don't want to be a synthetic parent. You don't want to be a synthetic spouse. You want to know the cure for all of that. That is the Torah. That is when you learn, when you grow, when you're able to go and you're able to build that connection, that relationship with God. There was a secular girl from an upper class family in Israel, graduated from high school, and she decides that she's taking a break from life. She's going and soul searching, as unfortunately many Israelis do, to the Far East. She's going to try to find the meaning of life. So she travels to the Far East. She ends up going into India, to Nepal, and she unfortunately sinks very, very low. She completely cuts off her entire contact with all her friends, her family in Israel. And she's sitting over there searching for life. But weeks turn into months, turn into, a year or 2 years, and the parents don't hear anything. They're getting very nervous. They're getting worried sick. The daughter is not calling them what's with her. She's alive. She's dead. What's going on with her? And they don't have a night. They don't have a day. And they're really suffering. The parents are really suffering. The brother of the secular family ends up becoming a baal teshuvah, ends up marrying a religious girl and living a religious life. He's seeing his parents go through such suffering. He says, how could I go and see my parents live through such suffering? He says, you know what? He takes it upon himself. He's traveling to India to try to find his sister, see what's going on. He goes, he buys a ticket to India, travels to India, tries searching for her high and low. It took him forever until he finally finds her in this remote village in India. And he realized she got sucked into one of the most radical cults in India. Ones that is deeply involved in idol worship, disconnected from the world. And to make matters worse, to compound, evil upon evil, she found, she fell in love with the guru, the main guy, the head guy, the guru. She fell in love with this guru, and he offered to marry her, and she accepted so happily and graciously. She was very happy. Everything was going great. And all of a sudden, she meets her older brother. And she's like, instead of saying, oh, so happy to see you, my dear brother, haven't saw you in a long time. First response is, well, what's up with you? What are you doing here? And, taken aback, he's like, we haven't heard from you in quite some time. Mom and dad are very nervous of what's going on. They didn't hear from you. Is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, everything is fine. This is like, I'm living my life. Like, what do you want? Leave me alone. And he starts explaining the hardships and difficulties that his parents are, that their parents are going through because of what she did. And she said, listen, he says, I found my life over here. I'm happy here. I found the guy that I'm going to get married to. I found the meaning to life. This is my place. Leave me alone. Let me be. And she, and then she goes and she tells him, listen, like in a short while, I plan on marrying, this guru. So the brother, says, listen, I can't change your mindset. I can't change the way that you decided to live your life. And yes, I see the question. I'm going to get to it later. I can't change your mindset, but he said, at least the least you can do is go and talk to our parents, explain to them the situation, show them that you're alive, show them that you're well, have some sort of connection with them. They're secular, okay, do whatever you want to do, but at least have a connection. She's thinking for a second, and she's like, I don't know. And the brother goes on, he says, our parents invested so much in you. They finance your entire education, which cost them a fortune, an arm and a leg. You had a higher level of education in Israel, private school. Not only that, they gave you everything that you wanted. They even financed this trip to India. They gave you the money to go over here. The least you could do is pay them a visit, show them some respect, give them a hug, a kiss, tell them I'm okay, I'm living my life. So she says, you know what? Yeah, I guess you're right. Okay. So the brother goes before she could change her mind, books her a ticket, and they travel back to Israel. she goes and she meets her parents and she starts telling them about the guy that she found meaning in life, and this is where she wants to be, and they can't change her choice. She's going through the whole spiel. And meanwhile, while she's going over there and she's spending some time with her parents, with her family, the brother is thinking about how could I get her out of this avodah zarah? How could I get her out of this idolatry? How could I pull her out of this? And he's searching high and low. It's like, to bring her to a rabbi, it's not really going to work. She's not going to agree to it. And he finally, comes with some sort of scheme. He says, I'm going to try to get her to a certain place. And then I'm going to tell her, he figured, the shul that he prays in, the rabbi over there was a phenomenal speaker. He has a great powers of persuasion, knows how to articulate things, knows how to persuade things. He said, if I can get her to meet this rabbi by mistake, maybe I can make it happen. And this is the plan that he schemed out. He says, I'm going to call her to a certain place, and we're going to sit over there. And then I'm going to be like, oh, wait a minute, it's time for prayers. He says, do you mind coming with me to prayers? And then we'll continue this discussion afterwards. And then the rabbi is going to give a speech between, let's say, Mincha and Ma'ariv. The rabbi is going to give a speech speaking about the effects of intermarriage and try to persuade her out of it. So he speaks to the rabbi. The rabbi says, yeah, sure, not a problem. Bring her on this and this day to the synagogue. And this is the speech that I'm going to give between Mincha and Ma'ariv. So they work out all the details, and they finish it off on all the minute details. And then he goes to his sister. He says, listen, tomorrow, do you mind? He says, I want you to take you out to a cafe. We'll sit and eat. We want to discuss, certain things about, you're going to be going away. But he made some, interesting, things that she would want to come. She says, yeah, sure, not a problem. They go and they sit in this cafe. They're sitting there for a half hour. They're sitting for an hour. And the brother is trying to stretch us out. And all of a sudden the brother looks at his watch and he says, oh my gosh, it's time for prayers. He says, I really want to continue this conversation. He says, do you mind? He says, can you come with me to prayers? Go to the women's section. I'll pray and then we'll continue afterwards. She didn't suspect a thing. She says, yeah, sure, not a problem. She goes into the synagogue, goes into the women's section, sits down. He goes over there. He starts praying mincha. And then he's looking. He said, the rabbi's not there. And he's like, what's going on? My whole plan, my whole scheme, where's the rabbi? And he's very nervous, he's sweating. He prays mincha, and the rabbi is still not there. And there's usually a speech between mincha and ma'ariv, and that's when the rabbi was going to speak about this topic. The rabbi is nowhere to be found. After, they're looking around, the congregants don't see the rabbi. One simple guy goes up over there, takes a sefer, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and he starts reading inside, because every day that there's a speech, the rabbi's not here, he'll say something. This person was not an experienced speaker, was far from anything that's persuasive, that's eloquent. He literally read inside from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which is an abbreviation of the halachos of the Shulchan Aruch of the laws, and he's reading the laws of Hashavas Aveda if someone found a lost object. And this brother is sweating. He says, oh my gosh, after all this is what, and it's not even interesting. The guy's reading straight out of it. It's the most dry, boringest thing he's ever heard. And he's like, I can't believe after all this, it didn't work out. And then this person ends his speech with one line. And he ends his speech with, at times, God works out that one person will lose something in order to give someone else the merit, the great mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, of returning a lost object. And then he ended the speech. Ma'ariv began, Ma'ariv finished, and the brother was deeply disappointed. He's like, I can't believe it. This is after I arranged everything. His entire plan was ruined. So that he couldn't show it to his sister, right? Okay, so they go back to the cafe and they continued with with everything they spoke about, and then they finished off. The sister continued with all the arrangements over the course of the next few days, and it's time for her to depart to go back to India. She goes to her parents. She says, I wanted to tell you, I appreciate everything that you've done for me. I love you very much, but this is a done deal. I'm going to get married to this guy. You can't convince me out of it. And I just want to let you know, I don't have any plans of ever returning to Israel. This is my final goodbye. Don't expect to hear from me anytime soon. We're disconnected from the world over there. So this is it. And with that, she leaves to India. Several months go by. And the daughter, all of a sudden, out of the blue, calls her parents. And she starts crying. She starts telling you, it's 2 weeks to the wedding. And things really didn't work out. Plans are canceled. I'm leaving the cult completely. I know I left in not the best terms, and I wasn't the most respectful. He says, but I'm coming back to Israel. The parents, the joy knew no bounds. Our daughter is coming back. The daughter thought, okay, fine, my parents had probably disowned me at this point. The parents came to the airport. They came with banners and signs and balloons and flowers. Welcome home, our daughter. And the daughter sees this. She comes overwhelming. She lands. She's overwhelmed with tears. She's like, I can't believe my family, has accepted me so well. And they said, he says, we prepared a whole banquet for you. And she goes in and she sees they rented out a hall. There's a family of means. They rented out a hall. They invited all the family. There's a welcome home party for our daughter. And this daughter was so emotional. She's like, I can't believe this is what you guys did for me. And throughout, over the course of the meal, over the course of the party, the daughter, stands up to the podium and says, I would like to say a few words. They shut the music down. And, she says, she tells her story. She says, we were living in Israel. And says, we're living a secular lifestyle. I found no meaning to anything. I wanted to search for meaning, for spirituality, for connection, for something in my life. And, I went to India. And there, I felt I've connected. They deal a lot with spirituality, with mysticism. I found a meaning to life. I found an interest to life. I found something else. I found all of a sudden my empty life in Israel, and the kibbutznik in Israel, the secular in Israel. It was nothing. All of a sudden here I found meaning. And I was particularly captivated by this guru, this magnificent guru who appeared to me to be the most perfect person in the entire world. And he offered to marry me, and I was so ecstatic. I thought this is the best thing that could ever happen to me. And I agreed. But one day we were walking in the street, we were talking about different esoteric ideas, mystical ideas about, other realms. And we're walking, and all of a sudden we notice on the floor a fat wallet. This guru bends down, picks up the wallet, sees there's credit card, there's passports, there's a wad of cash, a few thousand American dollars inside over there. And, his eyes all of a sudden start sparkling. He says, he goes over to his fiance, turns over to me, and he says, fortune is smiling on us. At that moment, said the girl, the daughter, says, I remembered I was here in Israel, and I remembered a certain class that we went to my brother's shul, my brother's synagogue, and they were speaking about the halachas of a Shabbos Aveda, of returning a lost item. And at the end of this lesson, the speaker, she thought it was a rabbi, so the rabbi said that maybe God arranges that one person should lose something so that somebody else will get the merit of the mitzvah of returning that lost item, a mitzvah of a Shabbos Aveda. So she turns over to her brother and she says, you remember that time? And the brother's like, remember that time? He's like, in his mind, he says, you missed the opportunity of a lifetime. He says, I orchestrated in his mind, he says, I orchestrated everything, but unfortunately this random person got up and started speaking. And she goes to the guru as he picked up the wallet and he puts it in his pocket. And she goes over to her fiance, the guru, and says, what are you doing? He says, why do we need this wallet? He says, you have millions in the bank. He charges us a significant amount of money just for people to see him. He has millions of dollars in different bank accounts around several countries of the world. And she goes over to him and says, there's a tourist. Tourists don't usually have money, especially if they're younger. They have everything, all the documents, all the money that they take over here, the passport, the ID, and everything. He says, why make this person miserable? He says, let's go and return it. The guru looked at me and he says, what are you talking about? Since when have we ever heard that when fortune smiles upon a person and brings gift literally from heaven directly to our feet, we should kick it away? And the guru continued preaching. He says, this stands completely in contrast in everything that I've been taught you. Here we have a gift from heaven. There's no better fortune. And as he's speaking, he says, I remember this class that this rabbi was giving. And he says, I'm a Jew. I couldn't deny the truth. And in my eyes, it's clear to me that God made this person drop the wallet to give someone the opportunity to go and return it. So I turned to the guru, says this woman, and I said, maybe heaven made that tourist drop the wallet so that we get the merit of returning this lost object to them and give this person back life instead of making this person miserable. And that way, she continues, I told the guru, we will find light, and we'll find good, and we'll find happiness by helping someone do something that's required of us. She gives this whole inspirational speech. The guru looks at her, starts laughing, he says, what? He says, of course not. He says, after all, what we seek is our own self-interest, what's good, what's comfortable for us, what we could connect to, and this is what's good for us to get this money. All of a sudden, there was a light bulb in this girl's mind. She says, all of a sudden, I realized the truth. says, we're two different species. And she goes on in her speech. It says, I immediately left this village. I didn't say goodbye, and I ran home. Now, when this brother orchestrated the entire thing, who knows if that would have worked? Maybe yes, maybe not. But here, she listened to a Torah class, a 15-minute Torah class about returning a lost item. It was dry. It was not inspirational. It was not motivational. It was just, whatever, information. And that changed her entire outlook and entire future. That is the power of learning Torah. That is the power of Torah has to connect a Jewish soul to God, to the Father in heaven. It doesn't matter what you learn, as long as you're learning, you're connecting to it. I once asked this to a couple, and I was, dealing with Kiev, dealing with people that I'm like, what should I teach them? What should I learn with them? He says, what's the difference? He says, you teach them Torah. Learn Elam Mitzias. Learn whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Torah is going to connect that soul to God, going to connect that soul to God. And this is the power of Torah. This is the power that Torah has to go and connect a lost soul or even a found soul. It can connect that person to God. It can rekindle that flame. I want to share with you one final story. Rabbi Gamliel Rabinovich brings down the story that there was a very modern, very progressive community in America that in there lived a 16-year-old boy that lived in this secular lifestyle. After he graduated high school with honors, smart guy, he ended up going into college afterwards, but he ended up doing college with yeshiva. He came home for Rosh Hashanah, and he decided that he's going to spend some time with his family. And he realized that he forgot to buy a machzor for the Rosh Hashanah prayers. And it was too late. All the Sfarim stores in that area was closed down. So he calls the community rabbi. He says, maybe you have an extra machzor lying around that I could use. And the rabbi looks into his Sfarim, his library, and he says, yeah, I happen to find a really old machzor. You could use it. His family recently got new machzor. Says, we don't need this one. So they give him this old machzor, and this is what he's praying with. During the break of Rosh Hashanah prayers, he goes and he started leafing through this very old, ancient machzor. And he sees he found an empty page at the end of the machzor, and right after that, there was a page that's written that it says a drasha, a speech before Tekiyos, before the blowing of the shofar. And it's written by Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum. And, he's starting to read it. Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum was a Satmar Rav. And this is when he lived in Hungary. He gave a speech about 80 years ago. And now this boy found this piece of paper, and he's thinking, he says, wait a minute. He says, who knows if even the Satmar Hasidim even know about this? He says he's reading now, and he started to study a speech that was given 80 years prior. He thought he's going to be reading about Rosh Hashanah. He's going to be reading about blowing of the shofar, reading about maybe teshuvah, connecting to God. And he sees the majority of the speech is barely focused on shofar. All that the rabbi is focusing on is that during that time there was a terrible breach, that woman in modesty, that woman began walking around in public with her hair uncovered, and that's what the whole speech was about. And it quotes a whole bunch of sources. The Gemara in Brachos, page 24a, speaks that a woman's hair is uncovered is considered an erva, and then he mentions the Zohar, that any woman that makes light of this is cursed. It goes on and on. The Shulchan Aruch goes on, says that if a woman's hair is uncovered, no one's allowed to make a blessing in front of this woman. He discusses at length this topic. After, this boy reads throughout all of this speech, he has this energy, the zealous spirit, boils up inside of him. He lives in a very modern community. He goes home, goes to his mother, and he says, listen, he says, you're not, you don't cover your hair? He says, I'm not sitting with you in the Yom Tov table. She's like, what are you talking about? She's like, and he starts explaining to her. Just learned from the Satmar Rebbe all the things that, the halachas. He says, you're sitting over here with your hair uncovered. I can't make a blessing with you. He gives all the curses, a whole bunch of terrible things. He says, I'm not going to sit with somebody whose hair is uncovered. So it's straight out halacha. The family was so shocked. This is a modern family, very progressive, very progressive community. This is not appropriate, from an enlightened person to speak like this. They tried to convince him, this is not accepted. The women of their town all dress a certain way. They dress just like everybody else. we're all very fine people, we're all good people, we're good Jews. Okay, so we don't dress like, in the olden days. But this boy, he said very firmly, he says, what do you mean? He says, the law is a law. He says, so they decided they're going to bring him to the rabbi. They can bring him to the rabbi, let the rabbi talk some sense into him. They bring him to the rabbi, who himself was very progressive. His wife wasn't so particular in these, in the laws of modesty as well. So the rabbi, very eloquently, very persuasive, very good speaker, goes and explains to him, listen, this is the days of the olden days. We're in the new era. This is very different. It's still okay. Don't worry about it. Blah, blah, blah. Gives him the whole spiel. But this boy was a smart boy. He says, listen. He says, the Torah doesn't change. The law is the law. The law says you have to cover the hair. The law says all these are the laws. I can't make a blessing. I can't, and he refused. As much as the rabbi convinced him, don't worry about it. Your mother, if she's not modest, it's okay. Don't worry about it. He would not budge. The rabbi goes over to the parents and says, listen, I tried. He's not budging. What could I do? So the mother said, listen, I'm not going to, I want my son, to spend the time together with me. I want my son to go and spend the meals together with us. Okay, so I'll cover my hair. She goes and she covers her hair. Her sister, the mother's sister, prays in the same synagogue. She sees, the next day, she's coming with hair covering. She says, well, what's up with this? Like, where are you going? She tells her the whole story. She says, my son, he saw this, he saw the paper, he got the whole thing, we brought to the rabbi, it didn't work out. So the sister, after the whole story, the sister was inspired. She says, if that's really the case, I'm going to also cover my hair. So you're not going to be the only one in the community, I'll also cover my hair. And she started covering her hair. And making a long story short, it ended up, after a short period of time, the entire community started covering their hair. All the women over here. This is the power of Torah. This is something so amazing. You think about it. The Satmar Rebbe spoke about something 80 years prior, that again, in Hungary, during the war, pre-war, like what was the modesty lacking during those times? Like what were already okay, maybe there was a reason that he actually obviously spoke about it, but we didn't realize that his speech came into effect that an entire community 80 years later changed and covered their hair. That is the power of Torah. That is the power that has the power to affect 80 years later. And this is something so important, whether you're dealing with speakers, whether with writers. Sometimes speakers are very into okay, fine, I want to reach, and rightfully so, I want to reach as much people as possible. And maybe not always does the speeches reach the volume that the speakers wanted to. But you never know. It could be 80 years later, and it can change an entire community, because that is the power of Torah. And this is the power when you're going and you're trying to connect to God and you're learning, and you'll be like, okay, wait a minute, maybe I didn't change anything. Maybe I did it. I still don't have that connection. Don't worry. That can still come. That will come over time. All you need to do is you need to learn Torah. As we see from this story, that even 80 years later, I had the power to go and change an entire community. You want to connect to God. You want to connect to the mitzvos. You have to do it out of happiness. You have to do it out of love. You have to do it out of enjoyment. And there's one way and one way only. And that is, you have to rekindle your connection. And that is through Torah study, learning Torah. And it could take a month. It could take a year. It could take 80 years. But at the end of the day, you're going to see the connection. And this, just going to pause it for a second, even though before we give it, because this was a question that was asked in the chat, to give a recap on how to love God when every perspective seems like we need to do teshuvah and you'll be punished if you don't listen to God and you don't keep as many mitzvos as possible, meaning that it comes from a more of a when we think about, certain aspects, it looks like, okay, we're coming in from a negative. If you don't listen to it, there's going to be curses. If you don't listen to it, there's going to be punishment. If you don't listen, you're not going to have a good year. So how are you supposed to go and transform that into a loving relationship and loving connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? There is something very important that we have to understand about these curses in general, the punishments in general. When God punishes Jewish people, when God punishes us, what is the essence? What is the source of that punishment? So if we think the source of the punishment is, let me get this person, right? It's like like sometimes you're in the spur of the anger of a moment, you go and someone offends you, hurts you, and you attack and retaliate back, and you're like, okay, this is a combat. This is the way that we respond to certain things. One country fires missiles, the other country goes and retaliates, and it goes back and forth. This is not how that works with a relationship with God. If you go against God, God does not retaliate against you and try to punish you. God wants to build that connection with you. And the way that God builds a connection is that sometimes it goes through ways of good, and sometimes it goes through ways of difficulty. And God sends you, hey, by the way, here is a reminder, do teshuvah, return to me. Any punishment, any curses that's written in the Torah, that's not coming out of anger, out of hatred, out of something negative. That's something that God says, okay, listen, you guys are not following the way that you need to. Here, return to me, come back to me. This is it's a building of a relationship. Even the negativity is building of a relationship. So when someone goes and let's say the relationship with, let's say, for example, husband and wife, it's not going well, and then there is a difficulty. That difficulty can spread the couple apart. But if you realize that difficulty and you could grow together and build it and work on that difficulty, whether it's financial, whatever it is, you could grow in it together. All of a sudden, that difficulty becomes a building block to build that relationship to where it was. And difficulty and obstacles can either be an obstacle, it could either be something that can hinder, or it could be a stepping block to get into a higher place. And that's what the difficulty, the curses that God gives the Jewish people, it's all meant to build that connection. The connection is all about love. It's all about building that relationship with us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with us and God. So when we're whether we're dealing with difficulty, we have to realize this is coming from a loving place. Sometimes it's difficult. I totally get it. It's difficult to understand. It's difficult to comprehend that. But we have to realize the source of everything is God, and the source of God is good. And God just wants to build a relationship, a connection with us. And the way that we build a connection, yes, we can do all the mitzvos. We check off all the boxes. We do everything that we need to. We check off we could be that great synthetic Jew. But that's the key word, synthetic. We do everything like, okay, we just build it. But if we don't build that relationship, if we don't have that connection, then we're losing everything. We lose everything. As the Ramchal says, you could get after 120 and realize you died a sinner. You thought the most righteous person, because you need the Torah, you need the building, you need that relationship. This is what you need. This is how you go and how you connect. And we're standing before Yom Kippur, and we're coming to Sukkot. We're coming to a time of happiness. We're coming to a time where we're supposed to go and connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're supposed to go and we're going to end up dancing with the Torah. We're going to hold the Torah. We're going to say, God, I love you so much. He says, I want to connect to you, God. You want to know how? Hashivenu avinu l'sarasecha. V'karvenu malkinu l'vedasecha. We're going and we want to connect to the Torah, and that's why we're singing and we're dancing with the Torah. And this is how Reb Shimshon Pincus explains, and this is how, also is from the Shem Shmuel, that what we're doing is everything is a build-up. We started off from Elul, where we're trying to improve ourselves. We come to Rosh Hashanah for Judgment Day, and then we have Aseres Yemei Teshuvah, where we're building upon that improvement. And then we're coming to Yom Kippur, where we're repenting for all our bad deeds. And all that culminates in Shmini Atzeres, that Yichud, that where God says, I just want me and you, a personal day. I want to build that relationship. And how we're going to build that relationship, that's Simchat Torah. That's dancing with Torah, really realizing that the only way to build a relationship, the only way that we can rekindle that, and the only way we can be able to enjoy and live life of happiness and connect to the Torah of mitzvos that we're anyways checking off the boxes, and that is through the Torah. That is through sitting and learning Torah. So this is the takeaway. The takeaway is we're coming to Yom Kippur, we're coming to Sukkot, we're coming to the culmination of the high holidays. You want to do something extra, you want to do something, learn a little bit more. You're going and you're driving, listen to a Torah class. You're doing something, listen to a Torah class. Maybe you can't listen the whole day. Maybe you're driving a lot. Maybe you can't do everything. But listen to something. Get something extra. Listen to the daily dose. Do something. Get a little bit of extra Torah in your life. You get a little bit of that extra Torah in your life. Open up a book, open up a sefer, learn a little bit. You get a little bit of that extra Torah. All of a sudden, you're going to have this enjoyment in doing the mitzvos. When you're going to enjoy the mitzvos, you're going to connect to the mitzvos. When you're going to connect to the mitzvahs, you're going to do it out of happiness. You do it out of happiness. You're connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is the source of everything. And that is the Shmini Atzeres, Simchat Torah, that we're all looking forward to, and they're all looking to dance with the Torah together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And with that, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us and seal us this Yom Kippur with an amazing year, a year of bracha, a year of atzlacha, siyata d'shmaya, parnasa taiva, shefa, of all amazing and good things. And also for our dear brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, that the war should end, and it should all, without any hardship on the Jewish nation. We should come to a place of peace and tranquility, a place that we're able to serve God out of happiness, out of connection, out of not fear of anything else, no anti-Semitism, and that is Bevias Goyal Tzedek, B'mehira B'meinu. We'll finish off as usual with a kapitel Tehillim, and say along with me as you hear it, and then we'll open up to any questions if there are any afterwards. As usual, we say Kapitel Kuf Lamed, that's in Tehillim Psalms, chapter 130. Shir Amalais, Bima Makim Karsicha Adonai, Adonai Shema Bikaili, Tiena Aznecha Kashuv, Vais the Kol Tachanunai, Im Avoinai Stish, Maria Adonai Mihi Amoid, Ki Imcha Slicha Leman Tivarei, Kivi Si Adonai Kif, Sanafshi, Vilidvaraya Chaldi, Nafshi Ladonai Mishamim La Baker, Shomim La Baker, Yachel Israel El Adonai, Kim Adonai Achesed Varbei Moifedus, Vuhu Yiftes Israel Mekolav Anisav, Achein Kol Beis Israel, Hanesunim Batsara Vashivya, Ha'omdim Bein Bayam Uvein Bayabasha, Hamakim Yirachim Alem, Vyatzia Mitzara Lervacha, Ma'afela Le'ara, Meshibud Le'geula, Hashta Bagala Bizman Kariv and Amar. Amen. Okay. Open up to any questions. Okay. Thank you for all the kind words. Appreciate that. Okay, here's a question. How much attention should we give to getting to the highest? Okay. How much? I like this question. How much attention should we give to getting in the highest of the holiest of places in Olam Haba? This question is great because it's layered in so many different ways. The question really is, how should you live your life? If you're living your life like, okay, what's going to get me higher in Olam Haba? It's great to give you a baseline direction, right? So if you know that Tam Torah Keneged Kulam, you know that certain sukkahs, you should use it as a baseline of which direction that you should go. But really what you should focus is right here, right now. Like here, right now, you have an obligation, you have a purpose, you have a reason, you have something that you need to do, you have a mitzvah, focus fully on that. Figuring out how to get to the highest, to the highest place in Gan Eden, that's great to give you a directional cause. This is my own answer. Maybe you have other rabbis give you different answers. But I think that should be a directional, meaning that you should say, okay, I'm going to deal in Kirov, I'm going to deal in Torah, I'm going to deal in Chesed, I'm going to deal in whatever, certain things that's going to get me for sure on a high place. And that's the path that you go on. And then you focus on each thing, give it your all. Yes. Okay. Rodolfo, I know you have a question. Go ahead. Yes, thank you for the kind words. Okay, I don't know, maybe you don't want to do it while it's on camera, so we'll finish off and then we can open up to any questions. Thank you all for joining. Anybody who wants to join us after for the live Zoom, you could either, usually the link is in the YouTube classes. Hopefully with Hashem we'll be able to get it to the Torah Anytime classes. So that's the most important. If you're listening to something or anything, you should listen to it on Torah Anytime. But there's a link to that. Otherwise, you could reach out to me at Rabbi Zitron at TorahAnytime.com. Thank you all, and may you all be sealed for an amazing, successful year full of health, happiness, bracha, tzlacha, parnasa, and tremendous spiritual growth.